A king is being carried through his own city because he can no longer walk. He is 24 years old. The war for his father's throne has taken his dragon, his brothers, his sons, and the use of his legs. Beside him sits a flagon of sweet arbor red to dull the pain. The litter stops at the royal sept. A white knight draws back the curtain. The king on the Iron Throne is dead, lips flecked with blood. If you watch the dragons dance and die on this channel, you are exactly where we left you. If you are new, this is all you need. The war is over. Rhaenyra is gone. Her young son is a captive in this castle. Someone inside these walls put poison in that sweet red wine. Who poured it, we have already put on trial. That chronicle is linked below. Tonight is the sequel. Tonight, a wolf walks into this city and arrests 22 men for killing the king. Only 2 of them will choose to die. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is After the Dance, the true history. Episode 1, The Hour of the Wolf. Before we begin, one small thing. If you love these histories, give this one a like and subscribe. Every like tells us you love what we are doing. Every subscriber helps us grow, and that is what keeps us creating. And if you want to explore this world beyond these episodes, our app, Westeros Within, is out on iPhone, iPad, and Android. Every episode travels with you, alongside illustrated books that read themselves aloud, the codex holding every house and family tree, hundreds of wallpapers, and the new atlas, a map of Westeros where every castle opens into its own story. You will find the links to download it in the description below. Now, to the Hour of the Wolf. To understand the trial, you must first understand the crime, and why the men sworn to this king decided that he had to die. It is the year 131 after Aegon's conquest. It is winter, and the Greens have no armies left. The last of them broke on the King's Road. Lord Borys Baratheon's host, shattered by river lords so young the histories call them the Lads. Now the Lads march on the capital. Behind them come the Northmen. The king's small council gathers around his litter one last time. Mark every face in this room. You will see them all again, in chains. Corlys Velaryon, the old sea snake. Queen Alicent, King's mother. Larys Strong the Clubfoot, Master of Whisperers. Grand Maester Orwyle. And at the door, Sir Gyles Belgrave of the Kingsguard. Corlys says what no one else will. The war is lost. Abdicate, take the black, and let your nephew reign. Alicent will not hear of surrender. She reminds her son of the hostages they still hold. The king, burned and broken, chooses neither. His order, cut off an ear of my captive nephew and send it to the river lords as a warning. The nephew is 10 years old. He watched a dragon devour his mother. The king would not lose the war, so the war removed the king. He left that council alive, bound for the royal sept, his wine beside him. He arrived dead. By every law of gods and men, that is regicide. It is also, in all likelihood, the reason the war ended. Both things are true at once. Sit in that knot. The whole of tonight's trial lives inside it. The question the realm faces is not who poured the cup. It is worse. What do you do with the men who did, when their crime is the peace? The man who came to answer that question was 23 years old, and he had marched the length of Westeros for a war that ended without him. Cregan Stark, Lord of Winterfell. He had pledged his swords to Rhaenyra when the dance began. By the time his host came south, nearly everyone he had pledged them to was dead. and his was a hungry host, graybeards and younger sons, the histories say, men who marched so there would be fewer mouths at home through winter, an army that did not expect to come back. They were promised a war. They arrived to find the gates of King's Landing open. A boy had been proclaimed king by the very men who had served his uncle. The city was quiet, the fighting done, the last king cold. Cregan Stark looked at that peace and called it what he believed it was: convenience. Storm's End still stood unbowed, he argued. Casterly Rock, Old Town. Finish it now, or leave the green power to rise again. The lords of the peace answered him with winter and famine, and a boy, King's mercy. They had taken away his war. So the wolf went looking for the crime. He did not have to look far. In the boy king's name, Lord Cregan Stark ordered the arrest of 22 men, charged with murdering the king they were sworn to. Here's some of the names: Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake himself, the man whose ravens had just ended the war; Larys Strong, the Clubfoot, Master of Whisperers, Lord of Harrenhal; Sir Perkin the Flea, the gutter knight who had raised up a puppet king while the dragons fought above the city; Grand Maester Orwyle; and Sir Gyles Belgrave of the Kingsguard, the White Knight who drew back the litter's curtain. 17 more filled out the wolf's list. Names the histories mostly pass over. Queen Alicent's was not among them. Her cage would be softer and far longer. Her story comes later in this history. Cregan called these men what the law called them: regicides, oath-breakers who fed their king to death rather than die for him. And nearly every man of them could look the wolf in the eye and answer, "We ended the war you came too late to fight." The not again. The murderers were the peacemakers. The government was the crime. Hardly a man of rank in the capital stood untouched by it. So judgment fell to the one lord who had refused the peace outright, and the first name on his list was the sea snake. Here the trial produces its first surprise. Not a verdict, a rescue. Baela and Rhaena Targaryen, twin daughters of Prince Daemon, half-sisters to the boy king, and granddaughters of Corlys, Velaryon. The war had stripped these girls of nearly everything a war can take. Their father, over the god's eye. Their stepmother, fed to a dragon before her own son's eyes. Baela had thrown her young dragon against the king's own sunfire and lost her, and lived. One thing the war had left them was a grandfather. His name now stood first on a headsman's list. The twins went to their half-brother, the one soul alive who understood what they had lost. And the boy performed his first royal act, a full pardon for Corlys Velaryon, offices restored, honors restored, a seat on the council. He was 10 years old. No crown had yet touched his head, and the pardon stood. Understand how strange that is. The most feared man in Westeros, with an army in the streets and the law in his fist, was overruled by a captive child, and accepted it. Part of the reason has a name: Alicent Blackwood of Raventree Hall. Black Alley, the chroniclers call her. No great beauty, they say, and say it like a warning. A huntress, a horsebreaker, one of the deadliest archers in the Riverlands. On the King's Road, when her nephew broke Lord Borros's flank, her 300 bowmen helped finish the last royal army of the war. The histories record no courtship. They record a bargain. The pardon stands. The wolf stands down. And Alicent Blackwood weds the Lord of Winterfell. The peace of the Seven Kingdoms was sealed not by treaty, but by a marriage struck across a headsman's list. One name had come off that list. 21 remained. Then came the judgment. to give it the force of law, the boy king named Cregan Stark, Hand of the King. He would hold the office a single day. It was enough. The accused were offered a choice, the wall or the sword. 19 men weighed the sword against a lifetime of snow and chose the snow. Sir Perkin the Flea went north among them. So, in name at least, did Grand Maester Orwyle, though the histories say he never reached it. Hold that thought. We will need it. 2 men refused. Larys Strong denied nothing, pleaded nothing, explained nothing. Why the Master of Whisperers chose to die, no chronicler ever recorded. He is said to have asked one mercy only, that once he was dead, the twisted foot he had dragged through life be struck from his body. Let me be free of it, he said, in death at least. With him, the ancient line of House Strong went out of the world. And Sir Gyles Belgrave, the White Knight who drew back the curtain. The histories never give us his reasons in his own words. They only let us feel them. A Kingsguard does not outlive the king who was poisoned in his charge. In the north, the man who passes the sentence swings the sword. Cregan took ice, the ancestral Valyrian greatsword of his house, and took both heads himself. 2 strokes. It was done. 6 days. That is how long the wolf governed the 7 kingdoms. Grand Maester Munkun, whose true telling gives us most of this tale, named those days the Hour of the Wolf. The morning after the executions, he returned the chain to the boy king, gathered his hungry Northmen, and started home. He had been handed the whole realm, and he gave it back unasked. Remember that. You will meet many men in this era who claw for that chain. Only one ever handed it back. Here is the question that has outlasted every man in this story. What were the 22? Kingslayers or saviours? And was Cregan right to hold the trial at all? The histories let both answers breathe. Take the defense first. Call them saviours. The war was lost. The king had been offered his life and the black, and his answer was to order the maiming of a 10-year-old hostage. Cregan's own remedy was 3 more sieges, paid for in small folk. Against all that, 1 cup of wine ended the bloodletting in an afternoon. And the peace held. Within a year, the realm was whole enough to hold a wedding. Call them regicides if you like. Every man the war would have killed after that morning owed them his life. And yet, ask who taught you to see it that way. The case for necessity comes to us, in no small part, from the pens of the accused. Orwyle wrote his account in a cell, bargaining for his neck, the same confessions in which he admits the poison passed through his hands. And Munkun's true telling, which this whole hour leans on, drew in turn on Orwyle's papers. When the men who killed a king explain why the king had to die, a careful reader holds the page a little further from the candle. Now, the prosecution. Call them Kingslayers, and the wolf right. These were not enemies. These were his own counsel, his own Maester, a knight of his own Kingsguard at the door. Every oath the 7 kingdoms rest on met at that litter, and every one was broken. Let that pass unpunished, and what is any oath in Westeros worth afterward? Exactly what the king's life proved to be worth. 1 flagon of wine. And Cregan's court is what let the realm keep the peace without blessing the method. 19 cloaks and 2 heads drew a line the new reign could stand on. The war is over, and murder is still murder. Without those 6 days, the reign of Aegon III begins as something uglier, a child crowned by his uncle's killers, and every lord in Westeros knowing it. And yet, the judge wanted 3 more sieges. Remember why the wolf reached for the law at all? The peace had robbed him of a war. His justice arrived hungry, settled for 2 heads and a bride, and let 19 men walk with their guilt unsorted. Who did what among the 22, the histories never say. And the Wolf's Court seems not to have cared. You may call those 6 days the conscience of the realm. You may also call them a proud man refusing to march home with nothing. So, what do I believe? I believe the poison saved the city, and I believe it was murder. And I have stopped asking those 2 beliefs to make peace. But I think Cregan Stark was wrong about the war, and right about the trial. Wrong, because a 3rd year of killing would have been paid by people who never chose this war. Right, because a peace born of poison needed one thing: someone to stand in the Capitol and say the word murder out loud. The trial did not undo the crime. It refused to bless it. That refusal, I suspect, is why the peace held. And if you press me, the verdict I trust most was never the Wolf's. It was Sir Gyles Belgrave's. The man nearest the crime was offered his life and would not take it. He knew things the chroniclers never will. He was there. He chose the sword. So tell me this: 19 chose the wall. 2 chose the sword. Which would you have chosen? And was Cregan right to hold the trial at all? Write it in the comments. I read every theory. Next week, the histories turn to a wedding on a hill of ashes. A boy who watched a dragon devour his mother. A girl who has lost twin, brother, mother, father, and a cup of milk, stirred with sweet sleep, so the realm would not see the bride break. And if these histories have become part of your week, as telling them has become part of mine, like this video, subscribe to Westeros Within, and join me next week for the next chapter of the true history.